We all know UFC fighters complain about pay. We all know they argue with Dana White, feel disrespected, feel underpaid, overlooked, and mistreated. But have you ever wondered why almost every fighter, legends, champions, prospects, eventually grows to resent the UFC, yet still never leaves? How can one company make people angry and loyal at the same time? The short answer, because the UFC is a golden cage. The long answer, let's break it down. To understand why fighters stay, you have to understand what they're signing up for. The UFC isn't a fight promotion. It isn't a sports league. It's not even just a brand. The UFC is the gatekeeper to fame, legacy, and relevance. If you're not fighting in the UFC, most fans simply don't care. It's harsh, but it's true. Back in the 2000s, fighters actually had options. Strikeforce, Pride, WEC, Bellator, real organizations with real talent, real money, and real alternatives. If you felt disrespected by the UFC, you could walk. You could negotiate. You could threaten to sign somewhere else. And then one by one, those options disappeared. Strikeforce was bought. Pride collapsed. WEC was absorbed. Bellator was sold off. The UFC didn't beat its competitors. It removed them. Suddenly, the entire sport began running through one company. That's where the golden cage begins. Once a fighter signs with the UFC, their entire brand becomes tied to those three letters. Your social media grows because you're UFC. Your sponsorships come because you're UFC. Your hype, your interviews, your exposure. It's all because of the UFC. So even if you're unhappy, even if you're underpaid, even if you're being thrown to killers for pennies, leaving means becoming invisible, and every fighter knows it, but it gets deeper. UFC contracts aren't normal contracts, they're fly traps. Lose, your contract extends. Win, your contract extends. Become champion, your contract extends again through something called the championship clause. Even when your contract is technically over, the UFC can refuse to let you go until you fight out your obligations. You don't really negotiate, you don't really bargain, you don't really finish your deal. You accept what you're offered, or you don't fight. It's not a contract, it's a cage. And even after you leave, the UFC still owns your image, your highlights, your posters, your old fights, and even your video game likeness for years. That means you can't even fully control your own brand after you walk away. Imagine making your entire name inside the UFC, then not being allowed to use your own highlights without their permission. Most fans don't know this, but fighters also don't criticize the UFC because they're scared. And they should be. The UFC punishes people silently. Less promotion, tougher matchups, delayed fights, buried on prelims, or simply benched. It's not written in a contract, but every fighter knows the consequences. You don't speak out unless you're ready for your career to stall. So why don't fighters leave? Simple. Leaving the UFC is like leaving the NFL to join a backyard league. Sure, you can go, but nobody watches. Nobody cares. Your sponsors disappear. Your relevance evaporates. The UFC controls visibility, and visibility is currency. Even when fighters try to chase more money elsewhere, they quickly realize they're giving up something bigger: hype, fame, legacy fights, global exposure, the things that made them want to fight in the first place. And that's the emotional trap. Fighters grew up watching the UFC. Their heroes fought there. Their dreams formed there. When a kid imagines becoming a champion, they don't picture a Bellator belt, they picture the UFC title. So even if the company treats them poorly, the dream still has a chokehold on them. That's why fighters hate the UFC, because the UFC controls their money, their career path, their exposure, their legacy, their image, and their future. And that's why fighters stay, because the UFC also controls their dreams. It's the perfect system. A system fighters want to escape but can't. A system they resent but rely on. A golden cage. So the next time you hear a fighter complain about the UFC, don't ask why they don't leave. Ask why the UFC has made leaving impossible.